Now, joining us right now, she does a tremendous job covering the Eagles for the Inquirer, is Olivia Reiner. And you should experience the new look of Inquirer Sports, where fans can read, watch, and listen to their favorite reporters and columnists. Go to Inquirer.com/sports. How are you today, Olivia?
Hello, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks for coming on. All right, so to start off, before we get into some of the facts and all the things like that, I want to put you in the shoes of Nick Sirianni. He was non-committal earlier, as you know, about playing the starters. If you, Olivia, was the head coach of the Eagles, knowing that the 2 seed in the NFC East is locked up, what would you do as far as your starters on Sunday?
First of all, I do not envy the position that Nick Sirianni is in right now and having to make this decision, because being in the locker room last night, you really got the sense that players not named Saquon Barkley really care about him getting this record. It's something that A.J. Brown said he wants to be able to tell his kids in 15, 20 years from now when they ask him about his glory days of playing for the Eagles. He wants to say that he was a part of the team that helped Saquon Barkley break Eric Dickerson's single-season rushing yards record. And, that's a beautiful thing, right? However, there's obviously that consideration that the Eagles have to make in preserving their starters for the playoffs and ultimately to reach that overarching goal for the entire team of winning a Super Bowl. And so with that in mind, if I'm Nick Sirianni, I am saying to Saquon, I'm so sorry. I hope this doesn't break your heart, but ultimately, you got to sit. You can't play next week. And I say that to every single one of the starters. It's just not worth it. I think the team has to come first. The Super Bowl is the goal. And if, God forbid, Saquon Barkley were to play next week this upcoming Sunday against the New York Giants, and he were to hurt himself, then that would be an absolute nightmare for this organization going into the playoffs. So they don't want that. Again, not a position I envy Nick Sirianni being in right now. I understand that this is a sacred, perhaps treasured record, and something that fans would like to see Barkley get. That players want to see Barkley get, but at the end of the day, Sirianni needs to be the adult in the room and do what is best for the team and do the best thing for his players too.
One thing that was pretty impressive, CJ obviously coming off of being ejected from a game the week before, comes into this one with a pick six, number one, and then steals another interception, his second of the game. He stole that one from Quinyon Mitchell. What are your thoughts on CJ and the way he bounced back?
Yeah, well, I think he apologized to Quinyon at least after the interception or after the game for taking that one away from the rookie. It was his as well. He's not taking it away from anyone, but obviously an interception would do Quinyon Mitchell some good in the race for defensive rookie of the year. But that aside, CJ Gardner Johnson had a really impressive performance yesterday and just reiterated how important he is to this Eagles defense. His penalty and ultimately his ejection last week against the Washington Commanders really started the downfall of that team in that game and kind of the way that they unraveled the fourth quarter. So I think the fact that he was able to respond in a really positive way for the team and pull himself together and have a really mature approach to the other yesterday's game against the Cowboys, not only performing really well, coming down with those 2 interceptions, but also just his composure on the field. Nick Sirianni, after the game, even remarked that he saw Gardner Johnson out on the field breaking up some of the skirmishes that had broken out throughout the game. Again, another divisional game when the tensions are going to be high, even if the Cowboys are eliminated from the playoffs, the Eagles locked into the playoffs. There's still going to be some pride to play for on the line, and Gardner Johnson handled himself the right way, played the way he needed to play, and ultimately proved that even though he isn't a captain on this team, he is a leader, and people look to him to help set the tone. He needs to continue to hold himself to that high standard as the playoffs begin in just about a couple weeks.
We're speaking with Olivia Reiner. She does a tremendous job covering the Eagles for the Inquirer. Olivia, talk about the quarterback play a little bit, both Pickett and then also McKee. What did you think about those guys overall under the circumstances?
Yeah, I think they both performed incredibly well. You talk about 2 very different circumstances for both players, with with Pickett going into this game, dealing with a ribs injury. Nick Sirianni would not confirm that Pickett's ribs are broken, as Darius Slay said yesterday post-game. However, you could imagine it's either they're broken or they're not, right? Like all these images that he's had done on his ribs over the last couple, at least dating back to after the Commanders game when he initially sustained the injury. Regardless, playing through quite a bit of pain, he performed tremendously well in an important moment for the Eagles to clinch the NFC East and lock themselves into that number 2 seed ultimately. With Pickett growing up rooting for this Eagles team as a native of Ocean Township, New Jersey, he went ultimately, by the end of the day, he ultimately was knocked out in the third quarter there, but he completed 10 passes on 15 attempts for 143 yards and a touchdown, almost had another touchdown to Devontae Smith, who had an incredible game in his own right. But ultimately, the fact that Pickett was able to really, make the passes when he needed to and stand in there, take some hits, and play through some pain, ultimately really helped get this job done for the Eagles. And then for McKee to come in there, the third-string quarterback who has been the emergency quarterback all season long, dating back to last year when he was drafted in the 6th round out of Stanford, he was really impressive for someone who has not played a regular season game at all in any capacity in these last 2 years. I thought he looked really accurate, poised, confident in the pocket. Ultimately, he completed 3 passes on 4 attempts, so for 2 touchdowns, which has got to be up there among fewest attempts and most touchdown passes thrown in players making their NFL debut. So a great showing from both of them. And I'll be really curious to see ultimately how Nick Sirianni handles the whole starting situation. If McKee ultimately gets the majority of the game against the Giants, I don't think I would be shocked if given the fact that Pickett is still dealing with this ribs issue, I'd be shocked if they want to see him out there a whole lot before the playoffs either. So I would imagine that McKee will get some playing time against the Giants.
Obviously, a few weeks back, there was talk of, need more targets. Now Devontae Smith had 7 targets in his last game. A.J. Brown with 5, so there were 9 for 12 between the two of them. Do you think these guys are happy moving into the playoffs now?
I think they should be, yeah. I don't think they were necessarily unhappy before, even if they weren't getting targeted a ton, and Saquon Barkley was taking on the lion's share of the workload in the offense. This team has gravitated a little bit more toward a rushing attack. In recent weeks, I think things have balanced out a little bit. But regardless, the team has been winning, regardless of the approach that they take. And ultimately, I think that should be satisfying to Smith and to Brown as long as they're winning. That said, it's good to see this team still being able to win in multiple ways, whether they're handing off to Barkley 31 times or they're dropping back. I mean, ultimately there was only 19 attempts in the passing game yesterday, so still really not a ton. But Smith and Brown made the most of their targets and ultimately had 3 touchdowns between the two of them. And even, Grant Calcaterra chipping in with that one big reception to really get things going in the second quarter on his 34-yard one-handed grab from Pickett. The two of them hooked up a lot throughout training camp. He was one of his most popular targets. So, I think that they should be happy. It should be a pretty good vibe going into this wild card round, unlike where this team was last year when things were really collapsing. They had a spot in the playoffs. They didn't have control of their own destiny by Week 18, but definitely a better vibe all around for this team.
Well, Olivia, we really appreciate your work. We love you coming on with us. We really appreciate it. And, it looks like you'll be working a little bit longer going into the postseason, so not it's not already year-round. Thanks so much, and Happy New Year.
Of course. Same to you. Anytime.
All right. Thanks so much. That was Olivia Reiner on the Comcast Business Hotline.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for watching our YouTube. If you want to help us out, go ahead and like and subscribe for us. If you liked what you saw, go right over here to our playlists and pick out whatever you want to watch.